Commander Lisa Morrison stared at the sensor readings on her bridge display. Something wasn't right. The Earth Defense Fleet hadn't expected to find anyone this far out in the Kuiper Belt, but her instincts told her the strange energy signatures ahead weren't natural. Status report. She called out to her crew aboard the EDF Horizon. 3 large vessels, Commander, replied Officer Ryan Cooper from his sensor station. Design unknown. They're surrounding a smaller ship. Energy readings suggest weapons fire. Lisa leaned forward in her command chair. First contact situations were delicate, and she had strict orders to avoid interference with alien civilizations. But watching someone get attacked didn't sit right with her. Get me a visual, she ordered. The main screen lit up, showing 3 massive warships, their hulls covered in intricate geometric patterns that pulsed with purple energy. They were firing on a smaller vessel that had sleek, organic lines and was clearly trying to escape. The smaller ship is broadcasting some kind of distress signal, said Communications Officer Maria Duncan. It's not in any language we know, but the intent seems clear. Lisa made her decision. Battle stations, ready point defense systems, and prepare missile tubes 1 through 4. Let's introduce ourselves. Red alert klaxons sounded throughout the ship as crew members rushed to their combat positions. The Horizon was technically a patrol vessel, but it carried Earth's latest military innovations. Most importantly, it had systems that no alien race would expect. Unknown vessels, this is Commander Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. Stand down your weapons and withdraw from the civilian vessel. She knew they probably couldn't understand her, but diplomatic protocols had to be observed. The response came in the form of a purple energy beam that shot past her ship's bow. They're trying to scare us off, Lisa said with a slight smile. Let's show them how humans fight. Activate the Ghost Drive. The Horizon's revolutionary stealth system engaged. To the alien vessel's sensors, the human ship seemed to split into 5 identical signatures, each one appearing to be the real thing. They're confused, Ryan reported with satisfaction. Their targeting systems can't decide which image to lock onto. Launch missile spread, pattern Delta. Keep our real position masked. 4 missiles shot out from different phantom images of the Horizon. The alien vessels immediately raised their energy shields, exactly as Lisa had hoped. Execute Maneuver Charlie 3. The real Horizon cut its engines and dropped down relative to the alien ship's position, using the cover of its phantom images to mask the movement. The alien vessels were focused on tracking the missiles, their shields burning bright as they prepared to absorb the impacts. But these weren't ordinary missiles. When they detonated, instead of explosions, they released powerful electromagnetic pulses. The alien shields did nothing to stop the EMPs. They had expected kinetic weapons or energy attacks, not this primitive form of warfare. The geometric patterns on their hulls flickered and died. Their weapons went dark. Their shields are down. Ryan called out. Main weapon systems appear to be offline. Target their engine sections with the railguns. Minimal force. We want to disable, not destroy. The Horizon's electromagnetic railguns fired with deadly accuracy, sending hypervelocity slugs through the now unprotected hull sections of the alien warships. Without their shields, the vessels were surprisingly vulnerable. Within minutes, all 3 attacking ships were drifting powerless in space. The civilian vessel is hailing us, Maria reported. They're transmitting. I think it's some kind of merchant identification code. Lisa nodded. Open a channel. Let's at least try to make proper first contact with someone today. The main screen showed a humanoid figure with silvery skin and large expressive eyes. It spoke in a musical language none of them understood, but its gratitude was clear from its body language. We receive your thanks, Lisa said carefully. We are from Earth. Can you understand us? The alien pulled out a small device and spoke into it. After a moment, broken English came through their speakers. Gratitude, deep, Alderan trade vessel, attacked by Zentvar warriors. You save. Council must know. Council? Lisa asked, But the translation device seemed to be struggling. The Alderaan trader sent them a data packet that their computers began to decode. As the information appeared on their screens, Lisa's eyes widened. They had just stumbled into something much bigger than a simple rescue mission. The data showed details of a massive galactic civilization, governed by something called the Council. There were strict rules about combat in space, rules that apparently every advanced race followed. Rules that, Lisa realized with growing concern, they had just completely ignored. "Commander," Ryan called out, his voice tense. "The disabled ships are transmitting some kind of automated distress signal. It's incredibly powerful. Looks like it's reaching way beyond our solar system." Lisa straightened in her chair. She knew that saving the trader had been the right thing to do, but she also knew that humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. "Send a full report to Fleet Command," she ordered. Tell them that first contact has been achieved, but not quite according to protocol. And add that they should prepare for visitors. I have a feeling we're about to get a lot of attention." As her crew carried out her orders, Lisa studied the still drifting Zenthar warships. Their designs were impressive, their technology clearly advanced. But they had been defeated by simple tactics and unexpected technology. They had assumed their shields made them invulnerable, never considering that an inferior race might think differently about space combat. The Alderaan trader was still transmitting its thanks when another signal caught Maria's attention. "Commander, I'm picking up multiple new contacts at the edge of our sensor range. They're huge, Mom. And they're heading straight for us." Lisa took a deep breath. Humanity's first real introduction to the galactic community was about to begin, and they had already broken all the rules. But looking at the disabled Zenthar ships, she knew she wouldn't have done anything differently. Sometimes rules needed to be broken, especially rules that let bullies prey on the weak. "Record everything," she ordered. "Whatever happens next, Earth needs to know what we're dealing with." She paused, then added, "And get those EMP missiles reloaded. Something tells me we're not done surprising people today." The approaching ships grew larger on their sensors, and Lisa Morrison prepared to face the consequences of bringing human warfare to an unsuspecting galaxy. The real question wasn't whether she had done the right thing. It was whether the galaxy was ready for how humans fought their battles. Admiral Peter Blackwood had seen many impressive sights in his 30 years of military service, but nothing quite prepared him for the council chamber. The massive room stretched up into darkness, with floating platforms holding representatives from hundreds of alien species. Their quiet murmurs echoed through the vast space as they waited for the emergency session to begin. "The Council recognizes Admiral Peter Blackwood of Earth," announced a tall, crystalline being from the highest platform. "You may approach the center." Peter walked forward, his polished boots clicking on the metallic floor. He kept his face neutral, though inside he was smiling at how the floating platforms were clearly meant to intimidate visitors. Humans would have just built a stadium. "We have reviewed the incident involving your Commander Morrison," said the crystalline being, who had introduced itself as High Speaker Lyrics. "Her actions have caused great concern among council members." "My government has reviewed the incident as well," Peter replied calmly. "Commander Morrison prevented an armed attack on a civilian vessel. Where I come from, we call that doing her job." A rumble of disagreement swept through the chamber. A large purple-skinned alien leaned forward on his platform. This was Karthal, the Zenthar representative whose people had started this whole mess. "Your commander used forbidden combat techniques." Exarthal's voice boomed. "EMPs, projectile weapons, stealth technology. These are primitive and barbaric methods that the Council banned 10,000 years ago." Peter raised an eyebrow. "Forbidden to whom? Earth never signed your treaties. We never even knew you existed until a week ago." "This is precisely our concern," said a new voice. A graceful, bird-like being glided down to a lower platform. "I am Sentinel Kirivan of the Council Archives. We have been studying your species' approach to warfare. It is disturbing." Holograms appeared in the air around Peter, showing footage from Earth's military history. Aircraft carriers launching surprise attacks, submarine warfare, guerrilla tactics, drone swarms overwhelming larger forces. Your people think differently about combat, Caravan continued. All civilized races understand that proper warfare is conducted face-to-face, with shield strength determining the victor. But humans, she gestured at the holograms. You hide. You strike from shadows. You use deception and trickery. We use what works, Peter replied simply. A fair fight is one you win while losing as few of your people as possible. This caused another stir in the chamber. Peter noticed some representatives actually shuddering at his words. The Alderaan representative, whose people Morrison had saved, spoke up next. But surely you understand our concern. Your commander disabled 3 warships without giving them a chance to properly defend themselves. There was no honor in such combat. Peter felt his patience wearing thin. There's no honor in 3 warships attacking a merchant vessel either. But let me be clear. Humans don't fight for honor. We fight to win, to protect, to survive. And we're very, very good at it. Is that a threat, Admiral? Exarthal growled. Not at all. It's a fact. One your ships learned the hard way. Peter gestured to the holograms still playing around him. You're all watching our history, seeing how we fight. But you're missing the point. These tactics, they're old. What do you think we've developed for space warfare? A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Peter could see the implications sinking in. If human primitive tactics could so easily defeat advanced alien warships, what else were they capable of? High Speaker Lyrics raised a crystalline hand for attention. Admiral Blackwood, the Council has maintained peace for millennia through strict regulations on combat. Your people's methods could destabilize everything we've built. With respect, Peter replied, if your peace depends on everyone fighting the same way, it was never very stable to begin with. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. A holographic screen appeared, showing a cluster of Zenthar warships approaching the human colony world. What is the meaning of this? Lyrics demanded, turning to Exarthal. The Zenthar representative stood proudly. A simple disciplinary action. The humans must learn their place. Our fleet will teach them the proper way of combat. Peter didn't seem concerned. Instead, he checked his watch. You really should have asked about our other colonies first. New holograms appeared, showing Zenthar ships near 3 other human worlds. But these ships were drifting, disabled, their crews being evacuated by small human vessels. How? Exarthal roared. Those were our most powerful battle groups. Lieutenant Martinez sends her regards, Peter said with a slight smile. She's been field testing our new wolf pack tactics. Looks like they work pretty well. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives were shouting, demanding explanations, calling for sanctions, or simply trying to understand how a primitive race had so thoroughly outmaneuvered one of the galaxy's strongest military powers. High Speaker Lyrics had to strike his crystalline hand against his podium several times to restore order. Admiral Blackwood, your people have created a serious situation. The Council cannot allow such disruptive military techniques to spread. I don't think you understand, Peter replied, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We're not asking permission. We're not going to fight like you do. We're going to fight like humans. And if anyone threatens our people, he looked directly at Exarthal. Well, you've seen what happens. The Council has rules, Lyrics insisted. The Council has traditions, Peter corrected. Rules adapt. Rules change. Rules get better. If they don't, they break. And from where I'm standing, your rules just broke. As if to emphasize his point, another alarm sounded. More Zenthar ships disabled. More human victories using primitive tactics. Peter looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of various representatives. We're happy to join your council. Happy to trade, to share knowledge, to be allies. But we won't change how we fight. Because somewhere out there There might be a threat your rules can't handle, and when that day comes, you might be very glad that humans don't fight fair. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was different. This time, Peter could see wheels turning in alien minds. Some were afraid, yes, but others were starting to understand. Humanity hadn't just challenged the Council's rules of warfare. They had shown them a whole new way to think about combat. And no matter what the Council decided today, there was no going back. The galaxy had changed, all because Commander Morrison decided to help a merchant ship in trouble. Peter smiled. Sometimes the biggest changes started with the smallest choices. Lieutenant Alice Martinez watched the holographic display as her small fleet of corvettes moved silently through the asteroid field. The 12 ships were barely larger than old Earth cargo shuttles, but size didn't matter anymore. Not with the new tactics she had developed. "Status report," she said quietly, though there was no real need to whisper in space. 5 Zenthar dreadnoughts approaching the colony, Mom, replied Officer Steve Clark from the tactical station. "They're moving in standard attack formation, just like the simulations predicted." Alice nodded. The Zenthar were nothing if not predictable. They always used the same formations, the same tactics, the same everything. It made them easy to fool. "All ships, execute Operation Wolfpack," she ordered through the fleet comm. "Remember your training. We're not here to fight fair. We're here to win." The 12 corvettes split into 4 groups of 3, each taking different paths through the asteroid field. To the Zenthar sensors, they would look like mining vessels, if they were detected at all. The new stealth systems weren't perfect, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to work long enough. "Enemy ships entering final approach," Steve reported. "They're charging their main weapons." Alice watched as the massive Zenthar ships moved toward the colony. Each dreadnought was nearly a kilometer long, covered in their distinctive purple energy shields. They were impressive ships designed to fight impressive battles. But they had never faced anything like this. All ships launched drones. From each corvette, a swarm of small, unmanned craft emerged. They were simple machines, barely more than engines and basic sensors, but there were hundreds of them. The Zenthar's powerful sensors immediately detected the drone launch. "They're responding exactly as expected," Alice said with a small smile. "Their point defense systems are tracking the drones. Start electronic warfare sequence." The drones weren't weapons, they were decoys. As the Zenthar ship's automated defense systems tried to track hundreds of small, fast-moving targets, the real attack began. Each drone was broadcasting different sensor signals, creating a cloud of electronic noise that confused the aliens' targeting systems. "Enemy ships are activating secondary shields," Steve reported. "They're trying to boost their sensor power." "Perfect. Execute Phase 2. The corvettes began moving through their own drone swarms, using the electronic chaos as cover. The Zenthar ship's sensors were so busy trying to track hundreds of small threats that they missed the bigger ones hiding among them. "Ma'am," Steve called out suddenly, "we're picking up a transmission from the lead dreadnought. They're demanding we fight properly." Alice actually laughed at that. "Send no response. All ships, prepare EMP torpedoes." The Zenthar weren't stupid. They had modified their shields after the first few encounters with human EMP weapons, but they still didn't understand how humans thought about combat. They had made their shields stronger when they should have made them different. Fire. Each corvette launched 2 EMP torpedoes, but these were different from the ones Commander Morrison had used. These didn't detonate into simple electromagnetic pulses. Instead, they split apart just before impact, each one becoming dozens of smaller charges. The Zenthar shields blocked some of them, even flared brighter as they tried to repel the attack. But they couldn't block everything, not when the hits came from so many directions at once, and it only took one EMP getting through to start a cascade effect. "Direct hits on all targets," Steve reported with satisfaction. "Their shields are fluctuating. Power systems are destabilizing. Begin Phase 3. Let's show them why we call this a wolf pack. The corvettes broke from their hiding spots, no longer bothering with stealth. They charged straight at the much larger ships, which were now struggling with failing systems. Each group of 3 corvettes focused on a single target, attacking from different angles. "They're trying to regroup," Steve said, attempting to form a defensive circle. "Too late," Alice replied. "Fire main guns." The corvette's rail guns opened up, firing tungsten rounds at a significant fraction of light speed. The Zenthar shields, already weakened by the EMPs, couldn't handle the kinetic impacts. Holes appeared in their defenses, and precise shots slipped through to disable engines, weapons, and communication arrays. In less than 15 minutes, 5 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy were floating helpless in space, defeated by ships a fraction of their size. "Begin rescue operations," Alice ordered. "I want those crews evacuated before their life support fails completely." As her teams worked to save the Zenthar crews, Alice received a priority transmission from Earth Command. She opened it to find Admiral Blackwood's face. "Excellent work, Lieutenant," he said without preamble. "The Council observers are, well, let's say they're reassessing a few things. How did the new drone swarms perform?" "Better than expected, sir. The electronic warfare package completely overwhelmed their sensor systems. They were so busy looking for threats everywhere that they couldn't focus on the real ones. Just like hunting in the wild." Blackwood nodded. "Confuse the big prey with lots of movement, then strike from an unexpected direction." The Zenthar commander tried to demand a proper battle. Alice added, "They still don't understand. They're learning." The Council has called an emergency session to review their combat regulations. Apparently, some of the smaller races are very interested in our tactics. Alice understood why. In traditional space combat, bigger ships with stronger shields always won. But humans had changed that equation. Now small ships could take down large ones. The weak could defeat the strong. It changed everything. "Sir," she said, "the Zenthar will adapt eventually. They'll figure out countermeasures." "Of course they will," Blackwood replied. "And then we'll come up with something new. That's what humans do. We adapt, we innovate, we overcome. Speaking of which, how's that new stealth carrier coming along?" Alice smiled. "Captain Banks says it'll be ready for testing next week. The Zenthar won't know what hit them." "They never do, Lieutenant. They never do." As the transmission ended, Alice watched her crews continuing the rescue operation. The Zenthar would be angry about this defeat, but they were alive to be angry. That was another thing the aliens didn't seem to understand about human combat doctrine. Sometimes the most effective victory was one where nobody had to die. "All rescue teams report success," Steve announced. "Zenthar crews are secure. No casualties." "Good," Alice replied. "Send a message to Earth Command. Operation Wolfpack successful. All objectives achieved. Ready to begin planning for next phase." She looked at the disabled dreadnoughts one last time. The Zenthar had thought size and power were everything in space combat. Humans had shown them differently, and this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn that the old rules of warfare didn't apply anymore. Not now that humanity had joined the game. Captain Christopher Banks stood on the bridge of what appeared to be a normal cargo freighter. But the swift venture was anything but normal. Behind its civilian-looking hull plates lay the most advanced weapons systems humanity had ever created. "Final systems check complete," reported Officer Kelly Wright from her engineering station. "All weapons are green. Stealth systems are functioning perfectly." Chris nodded, looking at the massive Zenthar fleet ahead of them. 50 ships had gathered for their biggest push yet against human space. They were done playing games. This time they meant to punish humanity for its dishonorable tactics. "Status of the civilian traffic?" Chris asked. "Plenty of real merchant ships in the area," replied Officer Paul Santos. "The Zenthar are keeping their distance from them, just like we predicted. They're still following Council rules about civilian vessels." That was exactly what Chris had counted on. The Zenthar would never think that a warship would disguise itself as a merchant vessel. It went against everything they believed about proper warfare. "Begin recording," Chris ordered. "The Council needs to see this. They need to understand why their old rules don't work anymore." The swift venture wasn't alone. 4 other disguised carriers moved through different parts of the merchant lanes, each one looking like a regular transport ship. The Zenthar fleet ignored them completely, focusing instead on searching for human military vessels. "Enemy fleet is approaching their attack position," Paul reported. "They're starting to split into battle groups." Chris watched the tactical display. The Zenthar were using their new formation, designed to counter Lieutenant Martinez's wolf pack tactics. They had learned from their defeats, but they were still thinking like Zenthar. "All carriers, execute Operation Ghost Fleet," Chris ordered through a secure channel. The Swift Venture's innocent-looking cargo panel slid open. From within its holds, dozens of small craft emerged, fighters, corvettes, and hundreds of drones. The same thing was happening with the other disguised carriers. "Zenthar fleet is detecting the launches," Kelly reported. They're confused. Their battle formation is breaking up." Of course they were confused. In their minds, civilian ships couldn't possibly be a threat. Their entire combat doctrine was based on the idea that you could tell friend from foe just by looking at their ships. "All units, begin electronic warfare," Chris ordered. Targeting priority is their command and control systems. The space around the Zenthar fleet erupted with electronic chaos. Drones broadcasting false signals, fighters using new stealth technology, and corvettes darting between confused enemy ships. The Zenthar's rigid formation, designed to counter wolf pack attacks, now worked against them. "They're trying to regroup," Paul said, "but they can't tell which signals are real anymore. Their communications are breaking down." Chris watched as the mighty Zenthar fleet began to fall apart. Some ships were firing at sensor ghosts. Others were chasing drones while real threats slipped past them. A few had even started shooting at their own ships, unable to tell friend from foe. "Sir," Kelly called out, "we're picking up a transmission from the Zenthar flagship. They're demanding we stop using deception and fight honorably." "Send them our usual response," Chris replied. Kelly smiled as she pressed a button. The response was simple, a basic text message reading no. The battle continued, but it wasn't really a battle anymore. It was a demonstration, a lesson. The Zenthar had brought their biggest fleet, their best ships, their most advanced weapons, and they were being taken apart by what looked like cargo ships. "Multiple enemy vessels disabled," Paul reported. "Their formation is completely broken. They're starting to retreat." "Launch Phase 2, Chris ordered. "Show them why they can't retreat either." More panels opened on the Swift Venture and the other carriers, but these didn't launch ships. Instead, they released clouds of what looked like metallic dust. "Dust cloud expanding," Kelly reported, entering enemy retreat paths. The Zenthar ships flew right into the clouds, not realizing what they were. The tiny particles were actually millions of microscopic robots. As they touched the enemy ships' hulls, they began interfering with their systems. Engines stuttered, weapons went offline, communications died. 80% of the enemy fleet is now disabled," Paul announced. "The rest are surrendering." Chris nodded. "Begin rescue operations, and send word to Earth Command." The stealth carrier concept is officially combat-proven. As his crews worked to evacuate the Zenthar ships, Chris received a priority message. It was from the Council itself. A holographic image showed high-speaker lyrics, but the crystalline being looked different now. Troubled, almost afraid. "Captain Banks," lyrics said, "we have observed your tactical innovations. The Council must know. Will all human warships now disguise themselves as civilian vessels?" "No," Chris replied honestly. "Some of them will look like asteroids. Others like debris. Some might even look like your own ships. That's the point you still haven't grasped. In war, nothing is what it seems. But this changes everything. Lyrics protested. If military vessels can hide as civilian ships, how can anyone trust any ship they meet? How can trade continue? How can civilization function? The same way it always has, Chris said, through trust built over time, through relationships and diplomacy, through choosing peace because it's better than war, not because you're afraid of losing a war. He gestured at the disabled Xanthar fleet. We didn't do this because we wanted to. We did it because the Xanthar thought their way of war was the only way. They thought they could bully smaller races because they had bigger ships and stronger shields. We showed them differently. And if others copy your methods, Lyrics asked, then they'll learn what we already know, that deception and stealth are tools, nothing more. They don't guarantee victory. They just change the rules of the game. The hologram flickered as Lyrics processed this. The Council has maintained peace through strict combat regulations for 10,000 years. No, Chris corrected. You've maintained stagnation. Real peace comes from understanding that war is too costly, too unpredictable to risk. We didn't break your rules to start wars. We broke them to show you why wars are no longer worth fighting. As the transmission ended, Chris looked out at the scattered Xanthar fleet, 50 of their most powerful ships, defeated by 5 disguised carriers and a cloud of robotic dust. Sir, Kelly said quietly, do you think they'll understand the message? Some will, Chris replied. The smarter ones. They'll realize that if they can't tell a freighter from a warship, then every battle becomes too risky. Every act of aggression could be walking into a trap. He smiled slightly. And that's the real victory here. Not beating their fleet, but making them think twice about using their fleet at all. The rescue operations continued as the Swift Venture maintained its innocent-looking freighter disguise. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had been the catalyst. The old rules were broken, but maybe, just maybe, the new ones would be better. Admiral Peter Blackwood stood once again in the council chamber, but everything was different now. The floating platforms no longer seemed designed to intimidate. Instead, they were filled with representatives who watched him with a mixture of respect, curiosity, and just a little fear. The council recognizes Earth's delegation, High Speaker Lyrics announced. Admiral Blackwood, you may begin. Peter stepped forward, looking at the faces around him. He saw the Alderaan traders, whose rescue had started all of this. The Xanthar, who had learned harsh lessons about human warfare, and dozens of other species, all waiting to hear what humanity would say. 3 months ago, I stood here defending Commander Morrison's actions. Peter began. Today, I'm here to help write new rules. Rules that reflect reality, not tradition. Holograms appeared around him, showing the key moments that had changed everything. Morrison's EMPs defeating supposedly superior ships. Martinez's wolf packs proving that small vessels could take down large ones. Banks's stealth carriers erasing the line between civilian and military ships. The old combat regulations assumed that warfare could be controlled. Peter continued. That if everyone fought the same way, peace would follow. But that was never true. It just meant that the strong could bully the weak, knowing exactly how any battle would play out. Exarthol, the Xanthar representative, shifted uncomfortably on his platform. His people had lost more ships in 3 months than in the previous 1,000 years. The Xanthar have requested peace talks, Cavarthol announced formally. We recognize that our understanding of warfare was incomplete. A murmur ran through the chamber. The proud Xanthar admitting they were wrong was unprecedented. Which brings us to why we're here, Peter said. Humanity doesn't want to teach the galaxy how to fight. We want to teach you why fighting isn't worth the risk anymore. He gestured at the holograms. Look at what happened. The Xanthar brought overwhelming force against our colonies. They followed all the traditional rules of space combat. And they lost because we didn't. Because we showed that strength isn't about the size of your ships or the power of your shields. But your methods have made space travel more dangerous, called out one representative. How can we trust any ship we meet if it might be a disguised warship? Exactly, Peter smiled. Now you're starting to understand. When every civilian ship might be a carrier in disguise, you think twice about attacking it. When every asteroid might hide a wolf pack, you think twice about starting a fight. When victory isn't guaranteed, peace becomes more attractive. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just changed how wars were fought. They had changed whether wars were worth fighting at all. We've received requests from 17 species for military training, Peter continued. All of them smaller races who were previously at the mercy of larger powers. We're going to grant those requests. This caused another stir in the chamber. The bigger races didn't like the idea of smaller ones learning human tactics. Not to teach them how to start wars, Peter clarified, but to show them how to prevent them. Because here's what we've learned in our own history. When everyone has the ability to hurt everyone else, people start looking harder for peaceful solutions. He turned to high speaker lyrics. The Council asked humanity to follow your combat regulations. Instead, we're asking you to follow our example. Stop trying to make war predictable. Stop pretending that tradition equals wisdom. Start accepting that peace comes from choice, not rules. Lyrix's crystalline form sparkled as it considered this. What do you propose? A new set of principles, Peter replied. Not regulations about how to fight, but agreements about when to fight. Real rules of engagement that protect civilians, minimize casualties, and make warfare a last resort, not a first response. He looked around the chamber again. We'll share our technology, our tactics, our ways of thinking. Not so you can copy them, but so you can understand them. Because an enemy you don't understand is an enemy you can't defeat. And when nobody can be sure of victory, everybody looks harder for alternatives to war. A small figure stepped forward on one of the lower platforms. It was Commander Lisa Morrison, newly appointed as Earth's military liaison to the Council. 3 months ago, I broke your rules to save a single merchant ship, she said. I didn't know it would lead to all this. But that's how change often happens, not from grand plans, but from simple choices to do what's right. And now the Council must make its choice, Peter added. The old way of warfare is over. You can resist that change. Try to maintain your traditions, and watch as more races learn what humanity already knows. Or you can help guide that change. Help create new traditions that actually promote peace instead of just regulating war. High speaker lyrics raised its crystalline hands for attention. The Council will vote on Admiral Blackwood's proposal. But first, we have a question. If we agree to this new approach, will humanity share all of its military innovations? Peter smiled. No, we'll share what we've already shown you. The rest, he shrugged. Well, let's just say humanity hasn't run out of surprises yet. And that's another lesson you need to learn. Never assume you know everything your potential opponents can do. The vote, when it came, wasn't even close. The Council that had maintained the same combat regulations for 10,000 years voted to abandon them entirely. In their place would be new guidelines, focused on preventing wars rather than just regulating how they were fought. As the session ended, Peter received a message from Earth Command. More Zenthar ships had been spotted near human space, but these ones were different. They were smaller, faster, clearly built with human tactics in mind. They're learning, Lisa said, reading the message over his shoulder. Of course they are, Peter replied. That's what smart opponents do. But so are we. Captain Banks has some new ideas he wants to test. Will it ever end? Lisa asked. This cycle of innovation and counter-innovation. Peter thought about humanity's long history of warfare, how each new weapon had led to new defenses, how each new tactic had spawned new counter-tactics. No, he said finally. It won't end, but maybe that's the point. Maybe it's the uncertainty that keeps the peace, because when you can never be sure you'll win a war, you work harder to avoid one. Lisa finished. They looked out at the Council chamber, where representatives were already gathering in small groups, discussing the implications of the day's decisions. The galaxy was changing, adapting, learning. All because humanity had shown them a simple truth. The best way to prevent a war isn't to make rules about how to fight it. It's to make everyone uncertain they can win it. The era of regulated warfare was over. The age of peace through uncertainty had begun.